Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another Learn to Play Traveler. We're using Mongoose 2nd edition, and I'm using the core rulebook, and we're going to go over all the rules in the core rulebook. In this episode, we should be in episode 5 now, I believe. We're going to continue on after combat. You're going to be able to follow along because I'm going to turn the pages right here so that you can see what I'm looking at in the book. If you are a Traveler player and you haven't ventured into the Mongoose rules, you're more than welcome to watch this entire series, and that way you can see what the differences are, learn about the Mongoose 2nd edition. If you're a referee and you're already running a Mongoose 2nd edition, or if you're thinking about running a Mongoose 2nd edition, and you have players that don't know anything about Traveler, or if they just want to learn the rules before you start making characters and stuff like that, direct them towards this tutorial series. If you have any questions, post them down in the thingamajiggers in the bottom. All right, now let's go ahead and get started. Let's turn to page... We're now going to be talking about encounters and dangers in this episode. Okay, dangers can be anything that's going to threaten your players in Traveler, like environmental dangers, radiation, things like that. But we're also going to be talking about encounters, like animals and NPCs. And then we're also going to be talking about healing a little bit, natural healing, medical treatment, how animals react to characters. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about generating non-player characters and random encounters, patrons and missions, basically anything to do with encounters with people that are going to help you or hurt you, and dangers. Okay, there's a number of environmental dangers that might affect your characters. Try to throw in some kind of unusual environment, even if it's not hazardous. This is just me interjecting to you guys as a referee. If you're running this game, try to throw in an unusual environment. If you have an encounter with aliens, or if you have an encounter with animals, or if you have an encounter at a spaceport, or even have an encounter basically just on the street, try to add a little bit of flavor to that encounter to make it more memorable for the players, and also it'll get more immersive. So as an example, say you're on the city street and you meet a Vargar merchant. He walks up to you. He says hi. That's dry. That's boring. That's you don't want to do that. You want to say something like, you're in this busy city street. Cars are flying by. It is raining. There's raining. You hear a thunderstrike in the background. It's a storm. The car drives by, splashes water on you. Now your pants are wet. And that's when you meet this raggedy-looking old Vargar that's got torn out. See how it's a little bit different. You get more out of the environment than if you elaborate. And the rain's not going to be hazardous to anybody. It's just cool, right? Or it's hot out. The sun is blazing. So you want to throw something about the environment in all of your encounters. Don't have to. You can just say, you meet a Vargar, he answers your questions. No, you don't want to do that. You want to elaborate. But let's talk about environmental dangers. There are diseases, okay? There's a bunch of diseases out there, and there's people that'll use diseases as a weapon, and then there's others that you might use it as a plot device to get players to go get medical supplies, or maybe they need to carry passengers from point A to point B so that they can be evacuated, or something like that. So diseases can, not even looking at the amount of difficulties there are for any of that, diseases just are good. They're a good plot device. Now, if a player catches a disease, which is entirely possible, he has to fail an endurance check. If he fails that endurance check, and it shows you what the endurance target number is to catch that disease. And if you do, you actually will take damage, because diseases do damage you. And remember, damage comes off your endurance first. So the interval is how often he has to make that endurance check. Once you pass it, then you fought off the disease. Some alien diseases you might need to make multiple passes. It's up to the referee. Falling. Yeah, what if you're on a cliff and you fall? You might take some damage. Or what if you're on a skyscraper and you jump off, and you forgot your parachute, or your grab belt fails and you fall. You fall, right? So this is saying that's on a 1G world, okay? So it's based on 1G. So if it's a higher gravity, it's going to be worse. And if it's less gravity, it's going to be softer. But this says you take a die of damage for every 2 meters that you fall. High or low gravity worlds will increase or decrease it. You can use your athletics to reduce the distance fallen by the number of meters equal to your effect. So if you roll and you get a critical, which is like 6 over, you can reduce the fall by 6 meters. 6 meters is pretty fall. That's like 18 feet. So you could, if you got really good athletics, you're basically doing parkour, and you're not taking a whole lot of damage. Another one is fatigue. You wouldn't think that fatigue would be an environmental hazard, but it is, because there are certain things that will cause you to become fatigued, like staying awake. Like if you just try to stay awake for more than your endurance plus 18. Most people have an endurance around 7. So 18 plus 7 is what, 25? So if you stay up more than 25 hours, you start becoming fatigued. If you do heavy labor for a number of hours greater than your endurance, so like more than 7 hours. Some people have a higher endurance so they can last longer. Or they might have a lower endurance, can't last very long. Or after a number of consecutive melee attacks. So let's say you and I are engaged in some kind of melee brawl, right? Remember, every combat round is 6 seconds. We talked about that in the last video. We fight. You throw a blow, I throw a blow. That was 6 seconds. You throw a blow, I throw a blow. That's 12 seconds. You count up those rounds that you're engaged actually in melee. Now, if I kill you and move over to this next guy and fight him, I'm still engaged in melee. Yeah, I'm still getting tired because I can't just stand there and go boop, 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 boop. No, I got to fight and dodge and use my melee skills as a negative for you to attack me. So I'm trying to block. I might be dodging, right? I might be parrying. So every round counts as a point of endurance. And if you get greater than your endurance, like if I've got a 7 and we fight longer than 7 rounds, which in D&D I've seen people fight for minutes, but usually it's over pretty quick. In Traveler, you fight and he's got armor and you're just hitting him with a dagger and you're barely doing any damage. Once you get past your endurance, you become fatigued. So now what fatigue does to you is it gives you a bane on all your checks. Everything until you rest. The referee might impose this partial rule here. That's if you get double fatigue, like I fight for 7 rounds, I'm exhausted. I fight for 7 more, or I'm fatigued. I fight for 7 more rounds, now I'm exhausted. An exhausted character falls unconscious. Various drugs can alleviate fatigue. So you just hit him up with some caffeine. I don't know. Another environmental hazard, poisons. Okay, I might be trying to kill you. Poisons operate in the same way as diseases, right? You just got to make an endurance check with a higher difficulty not to take any damage, or you take damage or fall unconscious. And then the interval. The interval is how often you have to make the roll to succeed. So like if you fail, you take the damage. After this many intervals, like let's say arsenic, right? Immediately you take a difficult roll, 10 or better. If you fail that, you take 2 dice of damage. Then you roll a die. If you get 2 minutes, let's say, after 2 more minutes, you got to make that endurance check again. If you fail, you take 2 more dice of damage, and you will basically be dead. Gravity. Now, this is an environmental hazard, mainly because in high gravity, you have high gravity, you have low gravity, like a moon, where you can like almost jump like 3 or 4 times as far as you normally could, or zero gravity. You might be on or outside of a surface of your ship, and you might be having to deal with no gravity, so you don't have any equilibrium. How do you get equilibrium? Well, the gravity pulls down on the liquids that are in your inner ear, and that causes your body to understand which way is up and which way is down. And when that liquid is floating around, you get the feeling of free falling, and you are a little bit disorienting, right? Unless you've got training. Okay, but let's talk about it. Grav plates are common in spacecraft. Okay, so in starships and other spacecraft, they put these, what they call grav plates, in the flooring, so that when the ship is on and pulling down, you can walk just like you normally would, outside, inside, doesn't matter. You're under a 1G gravity. In Traveler, you're supposed to be able to adjust it up or down to cause it to be higher gravity or lower gravity. You can turn off the grav plates. You could be in 0G. Most of the time you're in 1G. But sometimes you have to step off the ship. You're in the world. Or sometimes like the ship owner turns, or the engineer, whoever turns off the ship grav plates, and then you're in 0G. Okay, so high gravity environments is anything with gravity 1.4 or more. So 1.3, they don't consider that to be high gravity. Typically, these are worlds with size 10 or more. Okay, and we haven't got into building planets yet and understanding the characteristics of a planet, because every planet have their own stats, and one of those stats is called size. We haven't really gotten into that, so we'll get into that in a future video. But anything with a size 10 or better is considered high gravity. If you're a human and you're in a high gravity world, you're going to find it unpleasant. You're going to find it hard to breathe because your lungs are being pulled down, and your muscles are constantly, you're having to lift, because now you don't weigh, like if I weighed 200 pounds and I was on a planet with 2 Gs, I would now weigh 400 pounds. And for me to walk around as a 400-pound person, it might be hard. So, because my muscles and my body's not set up to carry that load. So if you're on a high gravity world, you suffer a -1 to all skill checks. And now it says you can acclimate to it, so understand and figure it out. That takes a D6 weeks. If you have athletics strength skill, you can acclimate automatically. Low gravity. That's gravity of 0.7 or less. So they give you that leeway, the 3 over, 3 under, right? Usually this is worlds of size 6 or smaller. And there are a lot of worlds in Traveler that are 6 or smaller, so referees got to keep your eyes on this. They're going to be in a low gravity. They tend to find life on a low gravity world initially pleasant because, hey, I'm feeling really light. My muscles are strong. I can carry a lot of stuff. But regular exercise regimes and medicinal supplements are required to prevent bone and muscle deterioration. You've heard about it, space stations, that we have today. The astronauts go up there and they come back and their bones and their muscles have deteriorated. That's why they put exercise machines and they make them exercise every day to make sure that their muscles and their bones don't deteriorate. If you spend too long in low gravity worlds, you can't tolerate higher gravities anymore because you've acclimated to low gravities. A lot like in that TV series, The Expanse, right? You got the Belters, and they are all in a low gravity environment because they're on asteroids, and those asteroids don't have a whole lot of gravity. And when they come to Earth or whatever, they just can't hold themselves up because that's like almost double the gravity that they're used to. So low gravity worlds suffer -1 on physical checks until they acclimate, and same thing. And if you have athletics dexterity, you acclimate automatically. Okay, 0 gravity. Okay, this is important. You're a traveler, you're in space, you're going to encounter 0 gravity at some point. It's just inevitable. So a 0 gravity situation suffers all the effects of low gravity world. World size is assumed to be 0. In addition, you must be careful to watch for things that can affect your momentum, most notably firing weapons that have recoil. So here I am. I'm floating in 0G and I fire a pistol. Boom! Think of that pistol as a thruster. I just fired a thruster, so and depending on where my center of balance is, I'm going to assume it's around my belly button, it's going to rotate me back. My legs are going to flip up. I'm going to fall backwards. So in 0 gravity, if you're trained in it, you don't fire up here because that would make your recoil even more effective. You fire low because it pushes against the center of gravity. You don't spin. You just get pushed backwards. Every time a traveler uses a ranged weapon that does not have the 0G trait or have close combat weapon, you must make an average athletics dexterity check to not automatically miss your target. So you go, woo, woo, and you'll start to spin helplessly out of control. Like, now if you spin out of control in zero gravity, you can regain control with an athletics check. Okay, that's assuming that you fired it and you started spinning back. Even if I was standing on the ground, you're really not, because your feet might be touching the ground, but there's no gravity pulling you to the ground, so you just fly off of it. Now, a way you can fight that as well is to hold on to something like a door handle or a wall fixture or something like that, and then fire your pistol, because then you're able to brace yourself, or put your back against a wall and fire. You know, it depends how you want to role play it. All right, the next environmental hazard is radiation. Yeah, that would be hazardous if it's high enough. It's concentrated throughout space. That's why your hull and your spacesuits are built with radiation protection. They shield you against that. That's why you have like hydrogen fuel is like around the outside and the living quarters are in the middle, because the hydrogen fuel actually acts as a shield for the radiation. That's why spacers, they tend to take more radiation than people on planets, but not significantly more. Yeah, if you fly too close to a star, you breach hulls, damage reactors, because you have an engine inside that's a fusion reactor. Maybe worlds have been nuked and there's radiation all over the place. You measure radiation exposure in something called rads. Okay, you probably already know that. If you absorb a certain number of rads, you suffer ill effects of radiation. One problem with radiation exposure is that physical symptoms can be treated and may heal. Cumulative effects of the radiation itself never go away. Travelers' rads must be kept track of, and further exposure adds to what the traveler is already suffering until a deadly level is reached. Accumulated rads can only be removed by using anti-rad drugs. Every time you're exposed to radiation, the result of rads adds, right? And if you've absorbed 75 rads and then you recovered and then absorb another 20 rads, now you have a total of 95 rads, because they don't go away, whether you've suffered any effects or not. If you look on the chart under radiation effects, the guy that took 75 rads, he's in that second chart right there, the 51 to 150. When he took those rads initially, he's nauseated. And then he gets -1 checks until he's medically treated. Now, once he's medically treated, he's fine. Now, if he takes those extra 20, now he's at 95. If he gets to 150, he's going to take additional effects of radiation, and he actually lose endurance. And if it goes all the way up to 800 rads, he's got internal bleeding. Now, if you look here where it says 51 to 150, he's now at 75, and then he takes another 20. That's not a big enough threshold to put him into additional damage in the same category. You have to take somewhere between 50 and 150. Radiation can get pretty bad. A weapon with the radiation trait, because some of the fusion guns and stuff like that, microwave guns or whatever, they're actually shooting radiation to cause this damage. Or if you enter a radioactive area, or a solar flare will cause damage or cause rads every hour or every round. So like a minor reactor leak, crack or something, 2 dice per hour of rads. Serious reactor leak, 2 dice every 20 minutes. Radiation weapon, 2 dice times 20, so that's quite a bit. Okay, vac suits can reduce radiation, and spacecraft hulls will reduce radiation, and those are going to be explained later. Okay, so let's talk about suffocation. Planets have various environments like jungles or mountains or water like lakes and oceans, okay? Or maybe your vac suit gets busted and you're in your vacuum and you don't have no air. Spacecraft is self-contained. Sealed structures with power usually sustain life support 1 person per stateroom for 1 month comfortably, and for 6 months on a stretch. Without life support, you begin to suffocate, suffering 1 die damage every minute. So if you're underwater, 1 die every minute. If you've got a hole in or if let's say you've got a spacesuit on but you run out of air, you start to suffocate. 1 die every minute. Now if you're strangling them or something like that, it's possible they can take 1 die every round. Temperature. Temperature can be an environmental hazard, especially if it's really hot or really cold. And then that's the chart at the top of the page, where depending on the temperature, you can take damage per round or damage 3 dice, 1 dice. That's heat. And then freezing, like if you get thrown into liquid nitrogen, you take 2 dice per round. Vacuum. Okay, we've kind of elaborated on vacuum a little bit. It's an additional hazard, not just suffocation, not just not having the air, and not just maybe being 0G, but you also have 0 pressure. So your blood starts to try to get out of your skin because it's being held in. Today in the atmospheres, I'm under pressure. I'm under 1 atmosphere of pressure right now where it's pushing against my skin. If you take that pressure away, the blood will try to get out of your skin. If you find yourself outside your spacecraft without a vac suit in the cold vacuum, you're in big trouble. Yeah, we figured that. Bubbles will start forming in the bloodstream, and air in the lungs will cause them to explode. Eyeballs will burst from your sockets and skin will stretch as the body expands. In short, the traveler will have seconds to best to get back to safety. Yes, your eyeballs will pop out of your sockets because of the pressure on the inside is pushing on it. I mean, you'll see it start to bulge. They call it blood boiling, but really it's just the blood is not actually heating up. It's just the bubble. I guess the bubbles in the air, in the blood is pushing it out. That's what happens. Not something like that movie Outland, where you have a hole in your helmet, or you pull the air hose off your helmet and you go into vacuum. If you watch that movie, you'll see their heads expand and then explode inside their helmet. That's not going to happen. 1 atmosphere of pressure out is not going to bust your skull. It will cause your eyes to pop out of the socket. It will cause the blood to come out of your body slowly. It will cause the amount of air that you have in your lungs to cause it to explode. But that's why they say to exhale before you go into vacuum, because then you won't have as much air in your body and it might not, take longer to explode. I don't know. Now, if you're exposed to vacuum, you suffer 1 die damage every round. You will suffer 1 die damage on the first round, 2 dice of damage on the second round, 30 dice of damage on the third round. It gets progressively worse until you're dead. You'll also absorb rads if you're in space, rather than being inside of a ship or inside of an atmosphere of a planet. Because the sun is emitting all these rads, and they are flying through space. If you are not protected from the sun, you will take rads. Even if you're Pluto side, the sun's light barely reaches there, but over the centuries, it's reached there, and the radiation has reached there. Okay, weather. High winds, torrential rain, effect -1 to skill checks, depending on the intensity. Flammable methane clouds, rain or sulfuric acid, mist or poisonous gas, flash floods, carbon dioxide glaciers. You can come up with anything, really. And with these rules, you can fit it in. All right, so that was basically just the first little piece of encounters. We're just talking about the environmental danger. Okay, we're going to talk about healing now. It's important. You have to be able to heal because your characters are adventurers. They get into trouble. They get into damage. They fight. They try to, maybe they're pirates, maybe they're anti-pirates, maybe they just fight an animal on a planet because they're, they get attacked. You got to be able to heal. 2 forms of healing. There's medical treatment and then there's natural healing. Medical treatment. You got first aid, surgery, medical care, augmented medical care, and mentals. First aid has to be done within 1 minute of the injury. So it's got to be quick. That's why it's called first aid. You got to get over there. You roll a medical check. The amount that it heals or restores is equal to the effect. So if you roll an 8, you restore 0. So if you roll a 9, you're going to restore like 1. And it's going to, so if you roll really high, you could restore quite a bit. And the wounded person is the guy that decides. It says it's divided as desired among all damaged physical characteristics. And I do believe it's the wounded party that gets to decide. Okay, surgery. A traveler still has 3 damage characteristics after first aid has been applied, requires surgery. So if the first aid doesn't get you at least one of your stats back to no damage, then you need surgery. So if you've got a little bit of damage on every one of your stats, you need surgery. Surgery restores characteristics points just like first aid, And if it's failed, the patient loses more characteristic points equal to 3 plus the effect of the medic check. The effect of the medic check. Okay. Surgery requires a hospital or sick bay. Once one characteristic is back to its maximum level, then the patient can benefit from medical care. You can go under multiple surgeries. So if you do a surgery and it doesn't get one of his stats back up to, first of all, you haven't killed him, and it hasn't brought one of his stats back up to full health, you can do surgery again and again and again and again until at least one of his stats is up to spec. If you got a good doctor, it should only be one surgery. Once you get out of surgery, you could do what's called medical care. If you have only 1 or 2 damaged characteristics after first aid has been applied, or who has had one of his 3 physical characteristics restored to normal through surgery, can benefit from medical care. Medical care restores 3 points plus the damage E, endurance Diral modifier. So if I've got an endurance of 9, that's plus 1. So that's so far I'm getting 4. Plus the doctor's medic skill. If he's got a 4 level in medic, now, or let's say 3, then I'm getting 7 back per day, divided evenly among all damage characteristics. So it's like not, and then bring these others up. Medical care requires a hospital or sick bay, and for the traveler to undergo full bed rest, which basically means you have to lay in bed, do nothing else. If you get up and go exercise, fly the ship, get in a gunfight, you don't get the benefits of medical care. Augmentation and medical. Cybernetic and genetic augments can interfere with medical treatment. All medical care or surgery medic checks treating a traveler suffering a negative DM equal to the difference in technology level between the medical facility and the highest relevant implant. For an example, if you've got a Tech 13 eyeball and you're in a Tech 10 hospital, you get a -3 because they don't know how to deal with that eyeball. Mental characteristics. Other than psionic strength, characters may also suffer damage to their intelligence or education. We'll talk about how that happens later. And those just come back at a rate of 1 point per day. Natural healing. This is without a doctor or hospital. You get points equal to 1 die plus your endurance modifier per day of full rest. So the difference is on medical care, you get an automatic 3, you don't have to roll, and you get to add the medic skill. So sometimes it might be better just to go natural healing. If you require surgery, you only get points back equal to your endurance modifier per day of rest. And if your endurance modifier is negative, you could possibly get worse. Unconsciousness. In combat, we've talked about this a little bit, but an unconscious traveler can make an endurance check after every minute. If successful, he regains consciousness. If he fails, he must wait another minute. But you get a +1 every time you make the roll. First time, endurance check. Second time, endurance check +1. Third time, endurance check +2. And it just keeps going up like that. All right, so that was healing. Healing is super easy, super fast. Let's talk about encounters. Throughout your adventures, you're going to encounter things like animals, aliens, robots, anything, plants, whatever. During an encounter, you're going to have to find out how far away they are. The range bands are right here. These range bands, they only really apply to encounter distance, not your weapon ranges. Weapon ranges are based on the weapon itself, and that was talked about in combat. You got your range bands right here, and you got close, short, medium, and all that with their number of meters. And this is assuming you're out in the wilderness, or maybe you're in a city or something like that. You roll dice, 2 dice. That gives you your distance. But you also have modifiers. So if it's clear terrain, the plains, you add 3 because you can see them further away. If it's a crowded area, like lots of people in the area, you get -2. In space, +4. So in space, are you going to get this type of an encounter? Possibly. You might see other people coming. It has nothing to do with spaceships. Spaceships can detect spaceships at much further ranges. If it's a vehicle approaching, right? Or if you're active, if you have a recon skill, if you're actively looking for things, right? Normally it's a simple recon check versus their stealth check. And if you have devices that might help you. So now let's talk about animals. I consider animals, because they're alien and they're weird shaped and they have tentacles or they can fly and breathe fire or something like that. I consider animals to be monsters. That's just me personally. But technically they are animals. You flip the page, you see the top one is the jungle howler. That's something you could find on Earth. It gives you a little bit of statage here. You see he's got 36 hits. Notice it doesn't give strength, dex, and endurance. It gives hits. It says hits. As much damage as the animal can sustain before it's killed. All damage is applied to hits rather than strength, dex, or endurance. When an animal's hits is reduced to 0, it's dead. So animals don't go unconscious, right? You don't knock animals out. You kill them. Speed. How far the animal can move in a single combat round with a minor action. Because they get their same thing. They get significant and minor actions as in combat. So this guy can move 8 meters, where a player moves 6. So this guy moves faster. Skills. What? They have skills? Right. It's just basically letting you know that they're really good at something. Like this guy's good at athletics, dexterity, melee, claws, recon, he'll notice you, stealth, he's really quiet, and survival. He knows how to live on the land. Right? You would think a jungle howler would have all those. All animals have athletics 0 and survival 0. Okay, attacks. Any attack the animal is capable of is listed here, together with the damage they deal. So this guy's using claws, and he does 3 dice of damage. That's pretty deadly. It's like a bullet. Traits, right? So they might have unusual traits, like this guy's got armor +3 and heightened senses. And we'll go over what the traits are in here in a minute. Armor 3. That's pretty good. I mean, for an animal, it's just tough skin is really all that is. Okay, and then traits. There's a bunch of traits, but there's a lot of them. Behavior. They tend to act in specific ways, and based on their behavior, will tell you how they respond to you and how they act, in the wilderness. Okay, let's talk about the traits. There's alarm. When panicked or under threat, the animal emits a powerful screech, odor. Basically, he eliminates an alarm for others here or whatever. Amphibious and armor and bioelectric. Let's talk about amphibious. It's equally at home on land and water and will not suffocate. Armor X, just like it's fat or horny plate. The same as your vac suit. You get armor X. Bioelectricity. The animal naturally generates powerful electric current. Let's say electric eel. So with each successful attack, the animal will cause an additional amount of damage with the stun trait as listed in bioelectrical trait. That means you're going to get knocked out if your endurance reduces to 0. Camouflaged. The animal is adaptive. It gains +2 on all stealth checks. Diseased. Ooh, yikes. The animal is a carrier of disease. Fast metabolism. +X. The animal has a heightened metabolism and very fast reactions. It gains a plus to its initiative rolls. Flyer. You guess what that is. The animal has wings or air sacs. Heightened senses. Like this guy has heightened senses. The animal can better hearing and sense of smell than humans, +1 on recon and survival checks. IRUV vision. Basically, you can see at night. Large, +X. The animal is extremely large and presents a huge target. Ranged attacks against large animals get plus to his, to hit him. Poison. The animal's attacks are poisoned. Psionic. The animal has psionic characteristics equal to the score listed on psionic trait. And then you just determine which psionic abilities he has. Slow metabolism. Basically gets a minus on his initiative roll. How big is a beast? Let me put this caveat in. Traveler, i.e. the universe, galaxy, has hundreds of thousands, if not millions and billions of planets. There is no way for any company to make a monster manual, right? They cannot list all the frickin' animals in the galaxy. What they can do is list, or what you can do is create important animals that will be in your campaign, right? So if you have an encounter planned where they're going to go fight the MacGuffin, then you build the MacGuffin using these rules. How big is a beast? If their hits are 36, look right here, he's large. An animal like that size would be a shark. Its damage does 3 dice. Is he large? No, he's not large. But they're saying he probably should be large +2. Okay, and then on the next page, there's a couple of other critters. You got the Skitterer. You notice he only has 8 hits. Shoot him, or better yet, the Scourge. If you hit him, he's only got 5 hits. You hit him with a Gauss rifle, That Siren Geist Worm, that is nasty looking. I don't think I want to ever mess with that. That is sickness. It's psychic. It's slow on its initiative. Yeah, ew. Yikes. And then you got the Raptor Lizard, 12 hits, not a whole lot of hits, a couple of shots with the rifle and it's dead. A Living Net. Okay. Those are just some examples. You can make your own, find some sci-fi pictures of some creatures, give them some stats, boom, you're set. Okay, and then there's also one called Small, basically gives you a minus to hit it. Now we're on behavior, because not all animals are created with the I want to attack you and kill you. No, some of them want to love on you, some of them want to run away from you. Okay, so let's see what we got. We got carrion eaters, chasers, eaters, filter, gatherer, grazer, hunter, hijacker, intimidator, killer, intermittent, a pouncer, a reducer, a siren, and a trapper. So different types of animals have a different type of motivation or behavior that they present. So let's go back and let's talk about this jungle howler. Regardless of your world, the majority of creatures fall into the following categories: herbivores, omnivores, carnivores, and scavengers. They're further broken down into what type of carnivore they are, what type of omnivore. So if you look at the chart, you see carnivores are pouncers, chasers, trappers, sirens, and killers. So this just happened to be a carnivore pouncer. So he's a pouncer. The fight or flight, right, says if surprised, flees. He doesn't stay and fight if he gets surprised. If the animal has surprise, he attacks. So it kind of lets you know if he's going to sneak up on you, if you see him coming, he's not going to attack. But if you don't see him coming, he'll attack. So let's talk about animal reactions, because that's kind of what that is. Non-domesticated animals usually react to threats, provocation, and blah, blah, blah. When travelers disturb an animal or otherwise draw attention to themselves while in the territory, roll 2 dice and consult the fight or flight table. If the result is high enough to indicate hostility, the creature attacks. If the result is low enough to indicate flight, it flees. So let's pick one. Killer. So if I roll 3 or less, he's going to flee, but if I roll 6 or better, he's going to attack. But an herbivore is more likely to flee than attack, and a scavenger maybe attack, but most likely flee. Where carnivores are most likely, they're going to attack. Okay, other characteristics. You're not the only human beings, or you're not the only characters in the world. There's a ton of other NPCs out there. So as a referee, you need to create some NPCs, and this explains how to do it. You got do they have allies? Do they have contacts? Also, your players, does your players have allies, contacts, or rivals? If that's the case, you need to make some NPCs that are those. So if I've got a guy that's got a contact, we need to make a character. What is his contact? We don't have to go through the whole character creation process. We can do this. Quick characters. And if it's somebody that has a ship and they travel around, maybe you'll encounter them more often than not. Okay, patrons. So patron is traditionally someone that hires you for a job. Quick characters. If I need somebody right away, automatically, like I need a rival or an enemy, jump in here and make a quick patron or a quick rival. And then we're talking about experience levels. Right, so you need to know how powerful or how experienced your NPC that you're creating is. Every character will have, now if you look over, well, on the next page you see experience, the skills that they might have. Average skill levels are here, and their average characteristics modifiers. It's just kind of a guideline. These aren't really hard numbers. Green characters might have a 7 in every stat, where maybe he's an average guy, he's got a +1 in a couple of different stats. Yeah, it just depends on how you want to make him. It's really, you don't roll dice to determine what his stats are. You just jot them down. Just write down what you want. If you want him to be stupid, give him a 2 intelligence. If you want him to be super strong, give him a 15 in strength. All right, so if you need to create a patron or a mission or just any kind of random encounter, this is going to help you out. D66, if you go back and watch the first video, I explained what a D66 roll was. But here you go. You got your allies and enemies. You can roll to see what kind of a person, what kind of a character he is, if he's an ally or an enemy. If you need to give him a quirk, that's the next page. Quirks are just things that make that character unique or a little bit different, or stands out in your mind. Like, here's an example. He's looking for something. Or another one is involved in political intrigue. Or another one is government informant, drunkard, or unusually ugly. And then random opposition. So if I'm doing a mission and I need some kind of random like encounter, I would roll here. We got animals, we got bandits, local lord, target is under electronic observation, or nobility. Random patrons, these are the people that might hire you for a job. So you got a minor noble, a belter, a thief, a broker, what have you. What is the mission? You roll here on the mission table, and maybe it's find a lost cargo, or investigate a target, or hijack a ship. And now, what is the target? Like they give you the find a lost cargo, but now you roll over here on the random targets, and maybe some computer data, right, that you're looking for, or a starport, or roll on the allies and enemies table, or a police cutter, or medical facility. Those might be the target of where that lost cargo is. It basically just helps you build your own random missions, basically. Payment for missions kind of gives you an idea. 2 weeks, 5,000 credits. Starport encounters. Let's say the players are wandering around inside of a starport. You roll and you find a passenger looking for a ship, or maybe you find a bizarre cultural performance, or you find a passenger liner arrives or departs, so you see it come in. Okay. Rural encounters, that would be in the wilderness, or it could also be in just like a small village or a town. You find a wild animal, or a small community, or a festival is in progress, or a police chase. Maybe they're not chasing you, but they're chasing somebody else, but you get involved somehow. Then there's urban encounters. So you're not in a starport, you're not out in the rural area. You're actually in a fairly large city. You could have a curiosity shop you find, or a robot, or a random character bumps into you. All kinds of different things. All right, so we talked about encounters, we talked about animals and their reactions, and we talked about their stats, and we talked about environmental hazards. So this video which should help you as a referee continue on with your campaign. But in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about encumbrance and equipment, and we're not going to go over all the different pieces of equipment because there's an infinite number of pieces of equipment, but we'll kind of go over the general topics, and I'll touch on some of my favorites. And then after that, we'll probably go into vehicles. Catch you on the next one.